Today, I want to talk with you about a strategy, the MSML strategy, that will help foster our students' vocabularies. And as we know, vocabulary is so important because it's key to strong reading skills. And one way that we can work with students to develop their vocabulary is to instruct them in morphological analysis. We can expand their vocabulary through this instructions. Morphological analysis fuels vocabulary growth. Crossan and Morse. And I am excited because you know that saying, give a man to fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime? That's the idea here. MSML uses explicit, multisensory, structured, metacognitive strategies that will help our students become stronger readers. So let's take a look at MSML. What is the overview? Well, it's explicit, it's structured, it's sequential, it's supported by research, and it is student-centered. And it is so versatile because we can use these learning patterns and metacognitive techniques anywhere, in any subject area, in any discipline, content area, any unit, and we can use it with diverse student populations, including students with language processing disabilities and with our English language learners, because they're supported to be able to work with prefix, root, suffix patterns, morphology, independently through MSML. When I discovered this, I thought, okay, this sounds so great. How am I going to use this in my classroom? What are the ways that I can do this? Let's look at the instructional steps for MSML. The very first thing that we do with MSML is to choose relevant patterns from varied sources. And you can choose patterns that are relevant to your students, no matter what age they are, no matter what subject you teach, no matter what unit you're in, no matter what cultures you're working with. And this is really important to me as a multi-grade teacher, but just because you don't teach multi-grades, let's say you teach in a single grade school or classroom, you can still use all of this because it's perfect for differentiating for your students. Just because they're in the same grade doesn't mean they're at the same level or step on the ladder of learning, right? So I really like that MSML says, hey, choose what's relevant for your population that you're working with. And we're going to be using a 3-phase process to do this. Now, I've taken a lot of the information about MSML from Schneider and Ming's article, 2019, that they wrote, and you can get more details about that in the references. Let's look at these 3 phases, excuse me. All right, well, the very first phase is to introduce a pattern. Now, when you've picked your patterns to teach your students, you're going to be looking for patterns either with prefixes or roots or suffixes that you can explicitly teach to them. And you're going to want to pick 4, well, up to 4, really no more than 4 patterns that look and sound different and that each appear at least twice in the unit that you're teaching or the text that you're working with. So let's look at this 7, well, let me go back. You'll see 7-step process. This first phase has 7 steps. The first step is that the teacher is going to display 2 or more words, 2 to 4 words, that are in students' active vocabulary that have this pattern. So start with words that the students know and use. So for example, if you're using the prefix EX, you might display the words export or expand. And then you're going to have students brainstorm in pairs and small groups how to use these words in sentences that are personally meaningful to them. So um, expand, maybe you're going to use that, you're expanding your vocabulary. Anyway, but have the students use it in meaningful situations for themselves. And then they're going to predict, what does EX mean? What is X? And then if needed, you'll display images that show an action of export or expand. So that's the first step of phase 1. You're going to display the words, have them brainstorm, and maybe display an image if needed. Then you're going to show them that pattern. Let's say you're using EX again, on a large card or on a chart or on the board, or you can use your screen, your smart board. And then we go to step 3. Once you've displayed that new prefix X or suffix or root, whatever you're teaching, step 3 says pronounce it. So show them how to say it and then have them repeat after you several times while they're tracing the spelling on, their desks using their fingers. Maybe they're going to trace it in shaving cream if you're really adventurous. They might use a whiteboard, they might use paper, but it's multi-sensory repetition, so it's enhancing their automaticity, they're correctly pronouncing it, and so they're going to be able to read it and spell it more easily. So they do that several times, and then you move to step 4, where you show an image and a gesture representing this root, prefix, suffix, the meaning of it. And this is to help them really get a discussion going about the meaning of the pattern, and images, gestures deepen our understanding. This can be teacher created. However, you can have students help you create a gesture that's meaningful, so that's an option as well. All right, step number 5 of phase 1. Once you decide on the gesture, you're going to repeat it, and then you're going to state the PRS pattern meaning out loud. And this is going to be done for 1 minute. You're going to repeat it and you're going to say it out loud. So if you say X means out and you're pointing to the door, because you decided, okay, you're going to point to the exit sign, the exit. X means out, X means out, X means out, X means out for 1 minute. I got excited about that and started barking. I'm not sure if you heard him in the background, but anyway, we'll do that for 1 minute. Now, step 6 of phase 1. In step 6, you're going to model for your students how to make a card on a 4x6 index card. And on that card, you're going to have information about the meaning of this pattern. So for X, you'll have your image, you'll have a gesture, you'll have key vocabulary words that have X in it, whether it's expand or extradite, whatever vocabulary you're working with for whatever level. And then you're going to have a sample sentence with it in it. And then you're going to also color code the card. And again, you're modeling for this card making process. You're modeling it for your students so that they can understand what they're doing. And then they're going to make their own. They can make their own image. You can give an image to them, or they can draw an image that they choose to assist their recall. And then this color coding thing, you're going to take a highlighter and mark the rim of the index card with one color for prefix, a different color for a root, and a different color for suffix. So whatever colors you choose. Let's say you do yellow for prefixes or pink for prefixes, since they both start with P. But color coding helps the students remember, where is this in the word? Is the pink for prefix? It's going to be at the beginning of the word. So if I see pink, I'm going to know it's at the beginning. And they can also write a P on the card if it's a prefix. Okay, then we're going to go to step number 7, which is where this introduction ends. They've seen the word for the first time. They've said it. They've spelled it. They've done all these different activities, and then they store that card with previously learned pattern cards. They might store it in a box or a binder, or they might put them on a ring, however you decide to do it. Maybe they could put it in a clear plastic bag. So it depends on your organizational system. But then they're going to use that for activities in phase 2. They could use it for homework practice, but to have it somewhere with those other cards is perfect. All right, that's phase 1. Now we're going to move to phase 2 of MSML. And that is where you practice in a group briefly, 3 to 5 minutes. And it's great to use games here. They just want to use this time to automatically be able to pronounce the word, to spell the word, and remember what it means. So you can use games like Bingo or Go Fish or Jeopardy or a simple board game. You can have folders, but they could have like a word detective blending practice. Schneider and Ming give an example as well of like dominoes, word and meaning dominoes, where you're like matching the word with the meaning, and they match it together. So it's easier to see. I can attach that. But that's phase 2. It's just 3 to 5 minute practice. And then phase 3 of the process is to apply this knowledge and to repeat the exposure. So you can have students read, write, speak, listen. As you can see over here, there's podcasts that you can have your students listen to with those words in there, that you can use videos. Having them read articles or literature or informational text or poems with words that use the pattern you've been teaching them. It all repeats the exposure, and it helps them to be able to apply what they're learning. So again, this is contextualized practice, so you're using it in whatever discipline you're teaching, whatever topic. And the goal is, once the students initially read or listen or watch, then they're going to go back to the same sources. They're going to identify the words that have the pattern you've taught and that they've been learning, and they're going to record those words on a recording chart or a word family chart. And then they can expand those charts by adding other words that they know with that target pattern. They can also review by writing stories with these patterns, these words with the patterns. They could write poems, and then they can return the charts to the teacher. And that's when you and I can analyze what they've been doing, and we can document. So when you think about this process, here are a couple of recommendations. Number 1, like I said, it's so easy to differentiate with this. I'm really excited to use this in my multi-grade classroom because it can be used with any age or group. Number 2, it's really important to select patterns that are different. You don't want to use really similarly spelled patterns or really similarly pronounced patterns. So if they're too similar in pronunciation, the way they sound or the way that they look, don't teach them at once. Try different ones. It's really great to do a prefix and a root at the same time because they're so different. And then the third recommendation is, please document the process. And I'm telling this to myself. It's super helpful. When weaknesses remain over time, we can look back and see that. So whatever assessment method you use, be sure to document and analyze student work. The ultimate goal is to have students use this independently, to do this individually, but they can practice doing it in pairs as they're getting more comfortable. And it will allow for metacognitive dialogue about the use of the words as you're working with them in that content area. So I hope this helps. I hope this is something that you can use. I know I want to go back and use it in my classroom. Again, MSML to foster vocabulary. Thanks.